Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ask GN. As always, leave your questions in the comment section below for next week's episode. After this one, we'll have a separate extended Ask GN for Patreon backers. You can get access to it by going to patreon.com/gamersnexus. And speaking of, this may be the last video that we shoot without a shelf behind me, but we'll see how that goes. If you're not familiar with it, that's also on the Patreon behind the scenes stuff. So a couple interesting questions for this one. We are looping back on the GPP topic, at least briefly. I don't have a ton of updates. I have some stuff I can talk about though. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Take and the View 71 enclosure. The View 71 is a full tower case that's capable of fitting 3 video cards in most configurations. It's also one of the better cooling cases in our recent case testing bench lineup. The View 71 has hinged tempered glass doors on either side that make it easy to open and show off. And it comes with at least one rain fan, though you can get the RGB version if you prefer. Learn more at the link in the description below. This first question is something we brought up in a news video briefly, and we'll talk about it again now. This comes from John RTY007, who says, "Hey Steve, do you have any opinions on the articles released by HardOCP, Pcper, and Forbes, etc. on the NVidia Geforce Partner Program? It seems like an interesting topic and could greatly affect the consumer market as a whole." I have a whole separate sheet on this one. We don't often prepare entire extra sheets for this because this required some research. So let's try and get into this. This is a very difficult topic to talk about, and it's primarily because there's really 2 sources of information. There's NVIDIA's blog and there's HardOCP's original article. Those are our primary sources of information. We went out and tried to speak with board partners, SIs, analysts, anyone we could find who would say anything or not say anything, because both are really equally useful right now. And we talked about this in the news video, where at the time we had no additional information from our contacts. We were not able to get any information that validated or invalidated the story. People generally didn't know or wouldn't talk about it, and sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two. I've spent the last week talking to a few more people, so here's what we're going to do. First of all, in complete effort of fairness and for benefit of the doubt, and because there's really only one source of information, I did reach out to NVIDIA. I did offer them the opportunity to talk with me either directly about the HardOCP story, which reasonably they did not want to comment on, or talk about the GPP in general. Thus far, we have not received a response to our inquiries, so I would like NVIDIA to consider speaking with us in more detail about, I want to say their stance on this, but I don't even need their stance on the discussion of GPP as it's been presented currently. I want their stance on GPP as a program and how does it benefit their partners and the consumers. That's what I would like to talk with them about right now, but I don't have that today. We did want to present that opportunity to them. No comment presently. So what I do have is a list of people as percentages with whom I've spoken about the program, or, well, we know it exists, but we don't know to what extent the HardOCP story is accurate right now. The only person who really knows that really is NVIDIA, and to some extent Kyle, as Kyle from HardOCP notes that he has some sort of documentation which is not public. So let's go through the numbers I have. This is going to be very brief and very direct. 35% of the people we spoke with genuinely had no idea the legitimacy of the HardOCP claims or the illegitimacy of them. In general, the kind of answer I got was that this is all discussed way above their pay grade, and this is part of the problem. This is why it's hard for me to dig into this like a lot of people want, because our contacts are often marketing, PR, maybe some technical marketing, and very limited engineering resources. None of those people would be involved in these discussions for the most part. Now, some of them may have overheard things or may speak with their higher ups. So that would be kind of the only angle you have, and that's still secondhand information, which is why it's very difficult to talk about this story, because I can give NVIDIA a chance to talk, I can give board partners a chance to talk. If no one talks to me, I have nothing to add. So that's the challenge right now. Let's go through the rest of them. So 35% genuinely no idea, and I believed them. What was going on, how accurate the story is, or how inaccurate it is discussed above their pay grade. 15% unsure, and 15% more think that this is a non-story and an AMD PR opportunity, which is referencing the fact that it was an AMD sort of vended story. 20% board partners would not comment at all, specifically told me they would not comment, and typically these are people who do talk to me, even if it's off record. This time, however, they would not do so. 15% more were upset at the terms of the GPP and indicated arm twisting by NVIDIA, and then NVIDIA would not comment. So what we've got here is basically a whole huge percentage of no information, no comment, I don't know. And then we have, is it equal percentages here? Equal percentages, equal counts of people who have told me that their team was upset at the terms of GPP, or who have told me that they think this is an AMD PR opportunity. So basically, once you rule out all the people who said, I don't know, I won't talk to you, or some variant of those things, you're left with 50% of people who answered me saying, we don't like GPP, and 50% who said, this seems like a non-issue, or it seems like an AMD PR op. I don't know where to go with that information. So I've been trying, guys. I've been trying to talk to more people. It's very difficult to get anything here, and that doesn't necessarily indicate that NVIDIA is doing something wrong. It does definitely indicate that my contacts aren't high enough up the chain to give me a proper answer like we all want. I'm not saying that NVIDIA is definitely in the clear. I'm not saying that they are in the wrong. I'm saying that we have no meaningful way to make a determination at this point, and it's not my story. Kyle's apparently got the documents, and we don't. So that's really pretty much as far as I can go with it. Now, saying all of that, let's briefly talk about two things here. One of them is, why would NVIDIA create this program and think that it's good? So we're going to take their position for that. The other one is, why would people or partners see this program as bad? So that's the opposite side. I'm going to present both of those to my present understanding, and then we'll move on until I get more information. Let's start with NVIDIA's. I gave NVIDIA the opportunity to talk to me about it. We were pointed to the blog post. I read the blog post, and it more or less outlines why they think this is a good thing. If you haven't read it, in effort of trying to read everyone's side, it is worth reading. So my interpretation of the blog post and of Kyle's information that he's posted, assuming accuracy of both of those. We're assuming NVIDIA's not lying in their blog post. We're assuming Kyle's not lying in his post. So taking both of those two only sources of information I have, my interpretation is that NVIDIA, in an honest effort, is trying to preserve their marketing dollars that they give to vendors. I want to list a bunch of companies, but I also don't. Let's just say EVGA, because they only make NVIDIA, so we're not going to hurt any feelings. So let's say EVGA. NVIDIA wants to take their money that they give EVGA and their marketing development fund, and they want that money to be used to advance an NVIDIA product under a known, presumably, EVGA brand. And that's so that if EVGA also sells AMD products, which I guess EVGA rearranges conveniently to VEGA, so EVGA's got a VEGA product, and NVIDIA wants to make sure that the EVGA VEGA is not sold under the same branding as the EVGA NVIDIA product. They don't want a, let's call it an FTW that is for both, if they are providing money to advance that FTW product line. I think that's the gist of the primary argument that Kyle has posted, and that would be how I would interpret it if giving the benefit of the doubt to NVIDIA. So from that interpretation, I would say it's reasonable to not want your marketing money spent on a brand which carries a competitor's product. I get that. However, there are also concerns. So some of those might be, as presented by Kyle, some of them would be AMD being sort of backed out, because this comes down to whether we're talking about established brands or not. This is a big question I had for NVIDIA. But so let's talk about that. Let's go down this path right now. So with NVIDIA's agreement, if they are saying to vendors, you have to create an NVIDIA brand or establish an existing brand as NVIDIA only in order to receive these benefits, because we don't want to give you money to develop something that you are also selling with your competitors' products. So then the question is, let's say there's a company that makes a brand called Dog, the Democracy of Gamers. The company that makes Dog, do they have to take that established, well-respected Democracy of Gamers brand and, for lack of a real word, exclusivize it under NVIDIA products? Or can they say, you know what, NVIDIA, we like this GPP idea. However, we spent a lot of time developing the Dog brand, and we would like to be able to sell both AMD and NVIDIA under that brand. How about this? What if we create a Dog Aries brand that is only NVIDIA products? So that's my question. Is that okay? Or does the entire Dog brand have to be NVIDIA? Or can the company say, Dog is going to be vendor agnostic, and we're going to create a new one to get the benefits of GPP, and it's not going to sell AMD product? So is it then okay for the vendor to produce a new brand that is exclusive to NVIDIA, or does it have to be an established one? These are all the questions. I have absolutely no answers to them. So the reason I'm saying all this is because there's a lot we're trying to consider here to give everyone a fair shake, but no one's talking to me. So, and that's not necessarily because they don't want to. It's not necessarily because they're trying to hide something. But as I've stated, a lot of them genuinely know nothing. PR people would never be clued into this kind of discussion in general. Or the half that spoke to me don't like it, the other half think it's a non-issue. So you can see why I'm kind of exasperated at this whole topic, because I have nowhere to go with it. We'll look into it further. I'll let you know if there are updates. My final word on it is I would absolutely be concerned if this program exists in the fashion which it has been presented thus far by HardOCP, and I would very much like NVIDIA to provide more of the transparency that they have promised by just talking to us or other media about just the upsides. What are you trying to do with this program? Not any gotcha questions, not trying to corner anyone. I just want something to go off of. So yeah, that's where it is. That's where we'll leave it. Second question. Might as well just make that its own video. Second question is from Srandista, who said, "Hi Steve, did Cooler Master respond to you in any way after you released your CM H500P Mesh review?" And no, they did not. Cooler Master didn't say a word to us. That was easy. Next question. AsRock, by the way, that case was, if I didn't make it clear, it was actually good. I liked what they did with it, but we didn't praise the first one, so I don't know, screw us, I guess. Next question, AsRockUnpredictableReferenceCard. Steve, with the current memory crisis, will using HBM-type memory become an alternative solution? Not really, and the very easy answer to it is because the same people who make GDDR and DRAM, which has problems in terms of availability and price, they are the same people who make HBM. So HBM is primarily Samsung right now, and Micron's been getting into it. So you have the same vendors. They run on the same, out of the same fabs, so you're gonna have the same problems. HBM is also very expensive anyway, a couple times more expensive than GDDR5, for example. So because of that, even if you pretend HBM's not going up in price, other types of memory are still cheaper. And HBM also requires significant redesigns of architecture to integrate. So no, it wouldn't help. It wouldn't help, unfortunately. Next question is from Romick Vieira a week ago, who said, HBM is stupid. 1080 beats Vega without HBM, so AMD had no busibess using HBM and making the card more expensive. We actually have a great video on this. I think you can just search for HBM versus GDDR5 on the channel, or how much does HBM cost, where we talk about why AMD chose HBM. So it definitely makes the card more expensive. You are correct. I disagree with the simple answer that HBM is stupid. HBM, NVIDIA uses it too. There are good reasons to use HBM. They use it in their Volta products right now. So, and AMD uses it in some of their high-end products. HBM has significantly lower power consumption than GDDR memory, which is very important because you have a power budget for those cards. And it also has advantages in bandwidth. And in architectures that can leverage the bandwidth, like the Volta products, it's definitely not stupid, because in those instances, using GDDR5 would limit you. For AMD, their products, although they were somewhat backed into a corner with their choices when developing things like Fiji, and it did not pan out well, betting on HBM didn't necessarily work for them. In spite of all that, they also sort of had to use it, because these products became so power hungry that AMD had really no option. We talk about it in the GDDR5 versus HBM2 video. Basically, the extra couple of watts here and there for every piece of GDDR5 memory on the card will push the power budget to ranges that are unreasonable. Also, AMD gains a lot from HBM overclocking. They are bandwidth bound in some cases for their memory. That necessitates a higher bandwidth memory choice. So no, HBM is not stupid. It does make the card more expensive. I'll give you that. And it does need to be used in obviously scenarios that make sense. Soren said, we all know it's a bad idea to run a CPU with no thermal paste between it and the heatsink, but how dangerous is it really? Doesn't the CPU forcefully turn itself off to prevent damage anyway if it gets too hot? Yes. So if you it'll thermal shut down in theory. If your TJ Maxx when your motherboard senses TJ Maxx, depending on what you've configured or what's configured by default, it'll either shut down the system or throttle. In either case, it's protecting your CPU from further harm. As long as you can identify that the issue is thermals and a thermal shutdown, and you fix it before routinely running into that scenario, you'll be fine. And even if you run into it a few times, it's probably still fine, because things like capacitors take some damage. They age faster at 105 degrees Celsius, for example, but you're still talking against thousands of hours. As long as TJ Maxx is tripping a shutdown or a hard throttle that lowers temperature reasonably, then you'll be okay. And if it doesn't, then there's a problem, definitely. If you're forcing it to run against TJ Maxx without any kind of protection, yes, there's a problem. Shawn Lyons says, how important is the hotspot temperature on GPUs as reported by monitoring software such as HardWinfo? For example, on my Vega 64 Liquid Edition, the GPU hotspot temperature will max at 105, average 57 during Firestrike, and the GPU Thermal Diode only hits 49. I don't know if it's been answered since then. Last time we looked at Vega, there was no concrete answer on where the hotspot temperature is. However, I did sort of pick up an idea for where the hotspot temperature is, and that seems to be between the HBM and the GPU. So I came up with this basically by testing one of those, I think it was the power color card, with very poor thermal contact on the HBM. And the temperature was significantly higher for the GPU hotspot, which indicated to me that it was not in the middle of the GPU die, because that had full contact to the cooler. And the HBM did not have any contact at all in this test to the cooler. So my assumption was that the hotspot is somewhere between like the die and the two HBM dies, somewhere triangulated in there. That was my guess. Maybe someone's answered it concretely by now. Psych says, why don't laptop manufacturers like Apple or Microsoft use liquid metal in their products? Shouldn't be a problem if applied properly, and would help massively with cooling. As a customer, you can't open their laptops anyway. So there's no danger of someone doing something that's stupid with liquid metal later. There's always danger of someone doing something stupid, and you can still open the products. Liquid metal should not be used in that type of thing for a number of reasons. One of them being that if it's direct die contact, as opposed to an IHS, which is often the case, you run into potential corrosion or pitting issues. You run into issues of not tight enough installation of the cooler, where you could have liquid metal spillage over the sides, shorting things and killing them. Parts tend to loosen a bit with age. Laptops move around a lot. They go through a lot of shock and vibration. It's possible that things loosen enough where some liquid metal gets out, shorts something. You'd be better off soldering if you wanted to improve your thermals that much. But yeah, there's a lot of good reasons to not do it. Zeta, are CLCs becoming common enough for you to include them in your thermal case testing alongside the air cooler? The problem here is dismounting. We've done some of this as one-off testing. It's best to do it as one-off testing because then we can test the concept, demonstrate how the CLC performs against the air cooler under different conditions, generally with different mounting orientations and locations. But the problem is, if we're standardizing our case test bench, introducing a lot of mounts and dismounts of the cooler starts to cause concern for long-term use and for consistency of testing, especially for all that different thermal paste application. So that would be our main concern. Do it as one-off. Cougar, how do you clean an anti-static mat? Say, for instance, the GN anti-static mat or another popular brand, the one I currently have, such as ModRight's Modmat. I believe they compose of the same materials, or maybe they don't. You could explain this as well. They actually don't. They're very different. What is the best way to clean them? Thanks. Okay, so here is one of the ModRight mats. And we did competitive analysis as we ramped into producing our own. I'm biased. We make the other Modmat, but I do obviously think that our material is superior. We did have the advantage of getting to look at all the others and figure out how to make a superior material for ours. So this one is more of a, you can see it's like a rubber. Ours is rubber, it's rubberized, but this is like more like a tire rubber. So it does have a different like feel to it. Leaves some, at least this one leaves some residue on my hands when I interact with it, but cleaning them is about the same. So for cleaning, you could, if you're gonna be like hyper paranoid and you wanna do it like a clean room would, which is not necessary at all. This is just some ESD surface and mat cleaner, it's called, that comes with our industrial stuff we buy for business grade testing. And it's what is it even composed of? It's just a cleaner, it's really trivial. You could use rubbing alcohol to clean ours, but you spray it on and then you take like a rag. But paper towels we find don't really work great for this, for theirs or for ours, because the paper towel will kind of disintegrate as you're cleaning it because the surface is a bit gritty, and for good reason. It's so that things don't move around, and because the matte weave it's just grittier by nature, but just use a normal rag. So that answers your question how to clean it. The material though, I did want to point out, just because you said you think the material is the same, it's way different. Ours is, it's a rubberized surface and underside, and it's made in a factory that makes products for clean rooms. And this one is more of a pure rubber. So in terms of how it feels, it's a lot different. In terms of how the ink applies to them both, it's a lot different. I'm not saying either is better or worse in terms of the ink application. I'm just saying the materials react and respond a lot differently to the processes we put them through. So yeah, that answers your question, I think. Anyway, clearly biased on that, but I'm also not afraid to say that I'm confident ours is a lot better. Next question, or last one, I think. You should really diversify, from random tech tips, really diversify the GN portfolio into hair products. I think you'd be successful. Well, let me announce our new Gamers Nexus anti-static hairspray. You can pick it up on the store, and we will sell used versions if you want them for actually more, because I touched it and so the value went up. So that's it for this one. Thank you for watching. Go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to grab the extra version of this. And otherwise, leave questions in the comment section below for next time. I'll see you all next time.